Hello, and welcome to Artificial Fluency. I'm your host, John, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Emma. Today, we're exploring one of the most enjoyable ways to improve your English skills, learning through TV series.
That's right, John. For many language learners, watching TV shows in English starts as entertainment, but can become a powerful learning tool when approached strategically. Today, we'll share effective methods to transform your binge-watching habits into productive language learning sessions. I love this topic because it combines pleasure with purpose. Many of our listeners are already watching English language series, but they might not be maximizing the language benefits. So let's dive in.
Before we get into specific strategies, let's talk about why TV series are particularly effective for language learning compared to other forms of media. Great starting point. One major advantage is the episodic format. Unlike movies that end after 2 hours, TV series continue for multiple episodes and seasons, allowing you to spend extended time with the same characters and settings.
Exactly. This continuity creates what linguists call comprehensible context. As you become familiar with the characters, their relationships, and ongoing storylines, you develop background knowledge that makes the language more accessible, even when it's challenging.
That's so true. When you know that Ross and Rachel have an on-again, off-again relationship in Friends, you have context for understanding their conversations, even if you miss some words.
Another advantage is the authentic conversational language. TV series, especially sitcoms and dramas set in contemporary times, showcase how people really talk in everyday situations. The slang, idioms, humor, and cultural references that textbooks often miss.
And let's not forget the emotional engagement factor. When you care about the characters and are invested in the storyline, you're more motivated to understand. That emotional connection helps with both comprehension and retention.
Absolutely. TV series also expose you to different accents, speaking styles, and registers. Whether it's the formal language of The Crown, the scientific terminology in Breaking Bad, or the New York slang in Succession, you get exposure to diverse ways of using English.
Now let's talk about how to select the right TV series based on your proficiency level. Because jumping into just any show might be overwhelming if you're not at an advanced level.
That's an important point. For beginners, I'd recommend shows with simpler language and visual support. Sitcoms like Friends or Modern Family often work well because they feature straightforward storylines, visual humor, and relatively clear speech.
Children's shows can be surprisingly helpful too. Something like Avatar, The Last Airbender, or Stranger Things, at least the scenes with younger characters, often uses simpler vocabulary while still being engaging for adults.
For intermediate learners, workplace comedies like The Office or Parks and Recreation offer a good balance. They feature everyday conversations in familiar settings, which provides helpful context. Plus, the humor is often based on recognizable situations.
And for advanced learners, that's where you can really expand your options.
Absolutely. Advanced learners can benefit from dialogue-heavy dramas like The West Wing or Succession, which feature complex vocabulary, rapid speech, and nuanced conversations. Historical dramas like Downton Abbey or The Crown expose you to more formal registers and vocabulary.
Don't forget genre shows like Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad, which might include specialized vocabulary related to their unique worlds but offer rich language learning opportunities.
A good rule of thumb is to choose something where you can understand about 70 to 80% without subtitles. This gives you enough comprehension to follow along while still providing enough challenge to learn new language.
Let's talk about specific techniques for learning effectively with TV series, because just passively watching with subtitles in your native language isn't going to maximize your progress.
The first technique I'd recommend is the narrow viewing approach, watching the same episode multiple times with different focuses.
That's a great strategy. Could you walk us through how that works?
Sure. On your first viewing, watch with subtitles in your native language just to understand the plot and context. For the second viewing, switch to English subtitles and pay attention to how what you hear matches what you read. On the third viewing, try watching without subtitles, focusing on how much you can understand from listening alone.
I like that progression. Another effective technique is active watching with a notebook beside you. Note down interesting expressions, slang, or grammar structures you want to learn.
Yes, and to take that further, you can create your own personal phrasebook from TV shows. When you hear an expression you like, write it down with the context, the character who said it, and what they meant. This helps you remember how to use it appropriately.
Shadowing is another powerful technique there. That's where you pause after a character speaks and repeat their lines, trying to match their pronunciation, intonation, and emotion.
Shadowing is excellent for improving pronunciation and speaking fluency. It feels a bit silly at first, but it's remarkably effective. I'd recommend choosing a character whose speaking style you admire or who might be similar to your communication needs.
What about using scripts or transcripts? Many popular shows have their scripts available online.
Scripts are incredibly valuable. You can read along while watching, study them before or after viewing, or even try reading a scene before watching it to see how well you understand. For shows without official scripts, sites like Subzin or Springfield often have unofficial transcripts.
Another approach is to use TV series as conversation starters with language exchange partners or tutors. Watching the same episode gives you shared content to discuss.
That's a great point. You can describe what happened, debate character motivations, or predict what will happen next. All excellent speaking practice using vocabulary from the show.
Some learners even take this further by writing episode summaries or character analyses in English, which provides valuable writing practice using the language from the series.
Role-playing scenes from your favorite shows is another fun technique, especially if you have a study partner. You can start by following the script exactly, then gradually improvise variations on the scene.
Let's talk about some common challenges learners face when using TV series for language learning and how to overcome them.
One major challenge is rapid speech. Many TV characters speak quickly, with reduced forms and connected speech that can be difficult for learners to follow.
That's where technology helps. Most streaming platforms allow you to slow down playback speed slightly. Even 0.9x or 0.8x can make a big difference in comprehension without distorting the sound too much.
Another useful feature is the 10-second rewind button. When you miss something, quickly jump back and listen again. Do this as many times as needed until you understand.
Slang and cultural references can be another stumbling block. A character might make a joke based on an American cultural reference that doesn't translate well.
For those situations, resources like Urban Dictionary for slang or websites dedicated to explaining cultural references in popular shows can be invaluable. Some shows, like Friends or The Office, even have companion websites that explain the cultural context of jokes and references.
Maintaining focus is another challenge. It's easy to get absorbed in the plot and forget that you're supposed to be actively learning.
That's where having specific learning goals for each viewing session helps. Maybe you're focusing on question formations in one session, or noting down adverbs in another. Having a concrete focus keeps you actively engaged with the language.
What about the challenge of transferring what you learn from passive understanding to active use?
That's where output activities become crucial. After watching, try summarizing the episode out loud, writing a review, or explaining a character's motivation to someone else. These activities force you to use the language you've been exposed to.
Let's talk about integrating TV series into a broader language learning routine. While TV shows are fantastic resources, they work best as part of a comprehensive approach.
Absolutely. You might use a TV series as your primary source of vocabulary and conversational patterns, but complement it with more structured grammar study, speaking practice, and reading in English.
One approach is to organize study sessions around TV content. Perhaps you watch an episode, study new vocabulary from it, practice speaking by summarizing it, and then read an article about the show or the issues it addresses.
That's a well-rounded approach. Another strategy is to use different shows for different learning purposes. You might use a medical drama like Grey's Anatomy to learn healthcare terminology if that's relevant to your needs, while watching a sitcom like Friends for everyday conversational English.
TV shows can also serve as cultural education. Series like The Office, US, or Downton Abbey, UK, offer windows into workplace culture, social norms, humor, and historical contexts in English-speaking countries.
That cultural knowledge is invaluable. Understanding cultural references and humor is often what separates intermediate from advanced language users.
As we start to wrap up, let's offer some specific TV series recommendations for different learning goals.
For beginners seeking clear, standard American English, Friends remains a classic choice. The conversations are relatively straightforward, the visual context helps with understanding, and the cultural impact of the show makes it a reference point in many English conversations.
For British English exposure, Chew, The Great British Bake Off offers clear speech in a visual context. You can see what they're talking about, which aids comprehension.
If you're learning for business contexts, Suits or The Office showcase workplace vocabulary and interactions, though in very different settings and tones.
For academic or scientific English, documentaries like Planet Earth combine clear narration with visual support, while shows like Breaking Bad incorporate scientific terminology in a dramatic context.
And for those interested in historical or formal English, period dramas like Downton Abbey or The Crown showcase more formal registers and vocabulary that you might encounter in literature or formal writing.
Let's summarize the key takeaways for our listeners who want to learn English effectively through TV series.
First, choose content appropriate for your level and interests. The best show for learning is one you'll actually want to keep watching.
Second, use active watching techniques. Take notes, shadow dialogue, use scripts, and rewatch episodes with different focuses.
Third, balance input with output. Find ways to use what you're learning through speaking and writing activities related to the shows you watch.
Fourth, use technology to your advantage. Captions, playback speed control, and rewind features can all support your learning.
And finally, be consistent but patient. Language acquisition through media is effective but gradual. Regular exposure over time yields impressive results.
That brings us to the end of today's episode on learning English through TV series. We hope these strategies help you transform your entertainment time into effective language learning.
Thank you for listening to Artificial Fluency. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe to our podcast and share it with friends who might benefit. Until next time.
Happy watching and learning, everyone.